Have you ever tried to connect with a loved one and they just don't seem to get it? It's like you're showing love, but they're not receiving it or they're not hearing you somehow. What if you are speaking love in a certain language and your loved ones have a different language? It's almost like you're speaking English and they're speaking Chinese and you just can't hear each other. What if you could hear each other? What if every time you delivered love or any kind of a loving action, lovers and your family and your friends all received it correctly every time? And what if you learned how to receive it correctly when someone is not speaking your language? That's what we're going to learn about in this episode. Stick around. Hey, I'm the Kinky Polyatheist, and I stand for shame-free sex, sexuality, relationships, love, and spirituality. Today on the show, I want to talk about the 5 love languages, which I think is one of the best tools that have come out in recent times. So what are the 5 love languages? Well, they are touch, words, time, acts of service, and gifts. But what does that even mean? So on this show, I take relationships very seriously, whether they're monogamous or polyamorous, whether you have one love or many. If you want to improve your relationships, I highly recommend liking and subscribing these videos. Also, share with your friends. The more people I can get involved in this community, the more we can all help each other. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below, or you can email me at ask@kinkypolyatheist.com. So the 5 love languages is from a book titled The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And I have to admit, it is an amazing book and I highly recommend it. I'm going to leave you a link in the description. Please go read it. It will change your life and it will change your relationships. Once you start connecting with people in ways that they can actually hear, and once you learn how to hear how other people are showing love and appreciation, your life will never be the same. So I highly recommend the book. Go check it out. Link in the description. So like I already touched upon, the love languages really are like speaking different languages. And if you think about the last time you and someone you love got into an argument or a misunderstanding, it turned out you both loved each other, but you just weren't hearing it. And that's why the different languages are such a good metaphor. So getting back to the idea, what if you spoke English, but your loved one spoke Chinese, or Russian, or whatever? You can turn to them and say, I love you, in English. But maybe they don't understand English, and they don't get it, and they're not receiving it. And they turn to you and they say something in Chinese, but you don't understand what they're saying. And they're saying it again, and now they're yelling at you. They're yelling at you in Chinese, and all you get is that they're yelling. But the words they've been yelling are, I love you. Can you see how frustrating that can get? You're yelling, I love you in English, and they can't hear you. And they're yelling, I love you in Chinese, and you can't hear them. But what you can hear is the tone. What you can hear and see is them getting frustrated at you. Wouldn't it be great if you spoke the same language? Wouldn't it be great if you could at least hear the other language? That's what it's like when you understand the 5 love languages. And that's why I am such a big advocate for them, because they will change how you hear other people presenting appreciation and love. So let's walk through them. The languages are, in no particular order, touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gifts or gift giving. I'm going to go over each of the 5 love languages in detail in a second here. Before I do, I just want to point out that when someone is speaking to you in your love language, what you'll find is it will fill you up. So if you imagine your heart almost being like a hot cup of tea or a hot cup of cocoa, when your cup is empty, when your love is empty, you're going to feel a certain way, you're going to act a certain way. When someone comes to you and appreciates you in your love language, it will feel like that cup just fills up instantly. So it's like if your heart was this mug and someone came along and just filled it with hot cocoa, and suddenly you're all warm and full of energy and love instantly. That's how you know what your love language is. If someone comes by with one of the other love languages and they try to fill the cup, it's not going to work. It's almost like there's a hole in the cup. You're just not going to receive it the same. And that's coming back to that whole if they're speaking Chinese and you're speaking English thing. They come along, they put the wrong love language in the cup, and it just falls right out. But if you put the right love language in, your cup will fill instantly. That's how you know, or that's how you discover what your love language is. you will realize that one of the love languages, when you're in a bad mood or having a bad day, it will instantly fill your cup. On the flip side of that, if you're having a great day and you're full of love and energy, and someone comes along and they do that thing that just, it feels like they just came along and just knocked your cup right over, and boom, all your love and energy is just gone. They're probably using your love language incorrectly or using it against you, and you didn't even realize it. So that's another way to identify what your love language is. 1, it'll instantly fill your cup on a bad day. 2, it can also knock the cup right out of your hands on a good day. Okay, now I'm going to talk about each love language in detail. Remember the cup full of cocoa. When you hear these things, which one of these languages would fill your cup instantly? These are coming at you in no particular order. No language is more important than any other language. The first language I'm going to talk about is touch. Touch is clearly just touch. The easiest example of that is a high five or a handshake or a hug. So a simple embrace is something that can be touch. Cuddling is a great form of touch. When you're having a bad day, if somebody gives you a hug, does that fill your cup? When you're having a bad day and your lover covers your face with kisses, does that fill your cup? That's what touch feels like. At the same time, if your cup gets knocked over, when someone bumps into you, or somebody pretends to do a high five, or somebody pushes you, or somebody touches you who you don't want to be touching you, do those things knock your cup over? Your language might be touch. So you can see when someone is appreciating you, the best way to appreciate you is to touch you somehow. My language is touch. So when my friends, family, and loved ones hug me, I love it. And I actually hug as many people as possible, assuming they are open to hugs. If they're not, I actually high five a lot of people. In the workplace and things like that, touch, for me, is a high five. So if somebody wants to tell me, hey, good job, the best way they can do it with me is a high five. Because a high five is acceptable in a workplace situation. If there are people I love, then a hug is probably the best way to show me appreciation. Next, words of affirmation. Words of affirmation is quite literally just saying you appreciate somebody. So you could say you appreciate somebody by literally saying, I appreciate you. You could say, thank you. Please and thank you are a big deal to people who have words of affirmation as a love language. So say please, say thank you, say I appreciate you, say I love you, say good job. If somebody's language is words of affirmation, just lean in and say, hey, these 3 specific things you did, thank you. And they will just fill up. You'll watch their cup just fill right up and they'll say, wow, thank you. You can also identify people whose language is words of affirmation because you'll see them giving compliments. You'll see them giving appreciation with words. You'll see them saying please and thank you a lot. At the same time, if words of affirmation are your language, odds are, if someone comes at you aggressively with words, if somebody cuts you down or criticizes you or cuts you off mid-conversation, that's going to be an equivalent of just knocking your cup over. And it's going to get to you really fast. You're going to feel like you've been triggered. So if your cup gets knocked over when people get rude, your language might be words of affirmation. Next, quality time. Quality time is when you spend 100% of your focus and time with one person. In many ways, it embodies the phrase, be here now. Be with somebody 100%. Turn your phone off, sit down, get rid of distractions, focus. Have 100% of your time and attention on the person you're with. If it's their love language, you're giving all this to them. If it's your love language, that's what you need. You need somebody to put all the distractions aside and give you 100% of their time and attention. And to do that, it's best to turn off your phone, all your distractions. It's best not to have the TV on. It's best to just sit down with somebody and give them 100% of your time. I have found a great way to do quality time involves sitting down and having a cup of tea with somebody, or sitting on the couch and having a conversation with somebody. Just listening, 100% listening, not talking at them, listening to them. When you get these things, when you feel seen and heard, and someone has given you the time to see and hear you, that's quality time. And that will fill up your cup if that's your language. Again, if you want to see your cup get knocked over with quality time, just leave that phone on. Leave that TV on. Do 3 other things while kind of talking to somebody. Have you ever been on the phone with somebody and they seem to be doing other things other than talking to you on the phone? They're busy reprimanding kids, or they're busy making some food, or they're busy driving, whatever it is. They're not giving you 100% of their time and attention. If your love language is time, that'll knock your cup right over. So if you feel triggered when people are not giving you 100% of their time, when you feel triggered when people are splitting their focus with you, your language might be quality time. Next, we have acts of service. Acts of service are little things you might do that show appreciation. They show, hey, I was thinking about you. I did this for you. They don't always have to be things that you're excited about doing, but they are things that you have done to show appreciation for somebody else, or someone has done to show appreciation for you. So for example, an act of service could be something like, hey, I was getting a cup of coffee and I got one for you. Hey, I saw you left your keys in the door. Here you go. Hey, I saw your laundry was in the washer, so I moved it to the dryer. I made you dinner. I did the dishes. I could pick up the kids for you. Would you like a back rub? And with that last one, I just want to say that's a combination of touch and acts of service. We'll get into combinations of the love languages in a minute. So if all those little things would just fill your cup and make you feel appreciated, wow, you thought of me and you did something for me? No one ever does things for me. Your love language might be acts of service. If you find yourself doing little things for people, hoping they will notice, your love language might be acts of service. At the same time, if somebody not doing something, or somebody doing a little something that makes your day difficult, knocks your cup right out of your hand, then maybe your acts of service. If you're having a great day, and then you walk into the kitchen and realize the dishes are not done, and they're not your dishes, you could be acts of service. By those dishes being dirty, it could be somebody is communicating they don't love you, which is not true, by the way. They're not communicating that they don't love you, but you're receiving it as a message that they don't love you, because your messages for appreciation are all acts of service. And that doesn't really look like an act of service. That looks like an act of disregard. If you feel that way, if you get triggered that way, your love language might be acts of service. The last love language is gifts. And again, that's no particular order. It could be the first love language. With gifts, I want to remind you, money has nothing to do with it. Someone who uses gifts as a love language will give you little things that basically say, I was thinking about you. They might be walking through a thrift store, see something for $1, and think of you, and then buy it, and then actually give it to you. I saw this, I thought of you, I just wanted to give it to you. They might make some origami and leave you a cute little origami thing. They might write a note and leave you a note, or a cute letter, or a cute card. That would be a combination of gifts and words of affirmation. They might make you some food and leave it out. They might bring you a cupcake. They might go on a trip and come back and present you with a keychain. Even though you might not be that interested in the trip they went on, they still want to show you they thought of you while they were away, and they got you a little souvenir. But again, you don't have to spend money. A gift is a gift. They could do something as simple as bring you a pillow, lend you a book, or give you an item out of their garage that they're not using anymore, but they really feel like you would appreciate. So if that's something that fills your cup, if receiving appreciation, if receiving, wow, they thought about me enough to get a physical object and put it in my hands, your love language could be gifts. At the same time, if people have broken promises around gifts and it really triggers you, your love language might be gifts. If people say they're going to bring food to the potluck and then they don't. If people say they're going to let you borrow something and then they don't, your love language might be gifts. If you lend things out to people and they don't take care of them, does that just knock your cup right over? If you give somebody something, literally give them a gift with no expectations, and they don't seem to appreciate it, or you find out it was put in the trash, does that kind of knock your cup over? Does that trigger you? Your language might be gifts. So those are the 5 love languages, and I want to remind you that you can do things that are in more than one language, like the massage is both touch and acts of service. The way leaving somebody a note is both a gift and words. I also want to remind you, take a moment to really think about your love language, and also, it might not be what you think it is. I have an amazing example about this, actually. So I know that my language is touch. That's my first love language. And words and time are kind of tied for second with me. I was dating a woman for a long time, and we both thought, her love language was acts of service. Because I grew up in an Italian family, which had a lot of acts of service built into it, and she grew up in a family that also had a lot of acts of service built into it, both of us just naturally did acts of service. It was a form of respect and appreciation that we were taught in our families. On the 5 Love Language website, which I'll leave a link to, there is a quiz, which will tell you what your love language is. We found out her love language was not acts of service. Her love language was quality time. And since my second love language is quality time, that's what we were really connecting on. We were connecting on quality time and acts of service, which were my second languages, but were her first and second. We thought her love language was the same love language of her parents, but it wasn't. So think about that. You may have a love language that you speak fluently because you were raised with it. It's your parents' language, it's your family's language, it's your culture's language, but it might not actually be your language. So I highly recommend going and taking the quiz. I'll leave a link in the description. I also want to point out, you can use love languages with people at work, coworkers, strangers. It doesn't just have to be family and close people. My best example for that is that I like high fives at work because my language is touch. And high fives are a great way to connect with people at work in a respectful manner that shows appreciation for me and for them. I also had a boss. I thought his love language was acts of service. Turns out I was wrong. One time he went out on a business trip. When he got back, he walked around the office and gave every single person on the team a keychain. Literally, it was something that cost him maybe 50 cents. But he went out of his way to make sure every single person on the team got a keychain from the city he visited so that he could say, "Hey, I was thinking about you. You guys matter to me." So the day that I realized his language was gifts, not acts of service, I started to change the way I would interact with him. I changed the way I would give appreciation. I started doing little things like, "Hey, I saw you left your pen in the meeting room. Here it is." And he was highly appreciative of those things. And our relationship changed a little bit. So keep that in mind. You can use these 5 love languages at work. The last thing I want to talk about is how immensely my life changed the day I ran into a woman who had the same love language as me. You wouldn't believe how incredible a relationship can be when both of you speak the same language naturally. It's one of the best things about being poly, actually. I can have a relationship with different people who have different love languages and get totally different feelings, totally different dynamics, and have a wonderful time in totally different ways without forcing anyone to be my one and only. But I have to admit, the day that I met a woman whose love language was touch, like mine, holy cow, I have never felt so loved and appreciated in my life. And now, I purposely keep an eye out for women like that. Some examples of that. She would greet me at the door with a hug. She would also hug me goodbye. She would go out of her way to give me kisses. She would sit on my lap. We would cuddle on the couch and watch TV or play video games. She would touch me or drag her fingers across me whenever she walked by, and I would do the same to her, and she loved it. My previous girlfriend would complain. She would say, "Ugh, you're always on top of me. You're always touching me so much. I'm claustrophobic. Give me some space." But this woman was the opposite. I would drag my hands across her as I walked by, and she would say, "Thank you." And she would love it. Squeezing each other's butts was a big deal and welcomed. And a big part of our life was literally cuddling and creating reasons and space and time to cuddle and connect. For me, that was touch. What's your language? You should definitely be looking for someone who speaks your language and wants to love you in your language. You deserve that. Taking that to the next level, the day I came across a woman who spoke my love language and was kinky, that changed my life. What if somebody took your love language and used it on you in a kinky fashion? What if they went out of their way, like above and beyond, to love you in your language in a kinky fashion? What if they went out of their way to touch you exactly the way you want to touch, and exactly in the way you never even knew you could ask for? What if they went out of their way to praise you and talk to you in ways that you never knew someone would say? What if they went out of their way to set aside time for only you? What if they went out of their way to do acts of service in spectacular, over-the-top manners? What if they were going to serve you? What if they went out of their way to present you with gifts that were just for you? What if we took the 5 love languages and bumped it up a notch and used them for kinky, playful interactions? I'm going to talk about that in my next video. So what's your love language? Drop it in the comments. How do people love you? And how do people knock the cup right out of your hand? Drop that in the comments too. The more we share with each other, the more examples we give, the more we'll understand other people and their languages and how to receive them and love them in their language. So drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and share with your friends. It actually helps me a lot. YouTube really wants me to have subscribers in order to promote my channel. So like and subscribe if you like this channel. You can also drop me questions at ask@kinkypolyatheist.com. Happy to answer them. In my next video, we're going to take the 5 love languages and apply them to kinky fantasies. Imagine that. I'll catch you next time. That's a nice warm cup of sweet hot love.